how to load and unload the filament. The first thing you need to make sure to do is cut your tip of the filament at a 45-degree angle. So I'm just going to unroll this right here, and we're just going to use some pair of scissors and cut at the sharpest angle possible. And let's take a look at that. So as you can see, it's a really sharp cut, and it is about 45 degrees, so that's what you're going to want. So going on over to the printer over here, you're going to pinch these two tabs while putting this filament in by doing this, putting it at an angle like that, pushing inwards until it clicks, and then you're going to make sure to load your filament into this plastic bit right here. Pushing that through until the other end has about 3 to 4 inches of slack. Once that's done, pulling it outwards like that, you're going to want to load the filament into your extruder head. So by pushing down until you feel it stop, as you can see right there, and then that's all you need to do on this end right here. We're moving on to the machine. Using your dial, you're going to move on over to the filament tab by turning it, and by clicking inwards is how you're going to choose. Scrolling on down to load filament again, like that, and then the machine is going to heat up to 215 degrees. Okay, so we're about heated up, and at this point it's going to start pulling the filament into the extruder head. And once you feel the gears pulling it, you do not want to you don't want to push it in anymore. It will cause jamming. So as you can see, the extruder is pulling in the filament, and you'll start seeing down below filament coming out. And once the new color has fully come out, so as you can see, some white was coming out from the last color. So as you see right now, it's all red. Once you do that on the screen, you want to confirm that filament is indeed extruding by clicking inwards. Once you do that, you're good to go. By pushing this tab right here at the bottom and holding onto it, load the filament back into the 3D printer. So unloading the printer is about as simple as loading it. You're going to move back on over to the filament tab, clicking inwards again, and then just choosing the first option, which states unload. Clicking that will heat it back up to 215 degrees. And I'm just going to pull up the filament holder while we're waiting, because we're going to need to unspool it. So once it gets up to 215 degrees, you just want to let it do its thing until it says you're ready. It's going to pop up the filament out the top, and once it says you're ready, you're going to just pull. So there we go. It says please wait, so you're just going to wait until it unloads fully. So once it's done, perfect. So we're just going to pull out the filament. As you can see right here, it all came out. So back on over here, we're just going to spool it clockwise until it pops out the tip right there, pinching these tabs in the middle and pulling out. And now you're free to load a new spool of filament, or just put this down and keep it empty. So for this portion of the training, we're going to be going over basic usage of the MakerBot print program. First off, we're just going to go over how to open up the program. You're going to want to go to your desktop of the PC, and you're going to locate the MakerBot print shortcut, as you can see on the screen right now. And you're going to want to double click on that. Clicking on that will open up the screen you see right here. And let's go over some basic controls first. So first off, right-clicking your mouse and dragging while keeping the right click held down will rotate the whole screen. Using the middle button, if you have a mouse, middle clicking and dragging as well will pan around. And left clicking and moving will move the model around, and I'll show you that in just a bit. So, just so you know, this rectangle right here, as you can see my mouse tracing it around, that represents the shape of your build plate. So the build plate is the surface that the print will be printed on. So if you place a model rather in the bottom left-hand corner, your print will come out in the bottom left-hand corner. And you can see with this little arrow right here, that indicates the front of the plate. So that's what's facing towards you. So, on to basic usage. So, the majority of the files that your customers are going to be bringing in will be off of a website called Thingiverse. Now, Thingiverse is a crowdsourced website that anybody can upload their 3D files to, so you have a big breadth of stuff that can be downloaded from there. It is community moderated, so that means that there will be no not safe for work things on there. So, nothing questionable, nothing like that. So, that will be accessed by using the button along the side here that says Explore Thingiverse. So just look for the T along the side, and clicking on that will open up the website. So I have it right here. So let's bring it in. So this is the Thingiverse website. So as you can see, it's got some featured stuff on the front, but what we're going to be concerned about is the search bar right here. So that's how your customers are going to be searching for what they want to print. So the example I always end up using is Pokemon, because that's a very common one that will be searched. And I have a very specific file that I'm going to be using because it shows some issues that will come up with 3D printing. So, as you can see right there, I just typed in Pokemon. I'll do it again and pressed enter. And then you're going to be shown the search screen right here. So from here, you can choose whatever you want. You can browse, anything like that. There's a lot of different files on here. But the one specifically I'm going to use is this one right here. So clicking on that will present you with the screen. As you can see, you have a view of, you can see the screenshots, what it'll look like, depending on what the person that made this put up. So this is what it'll look like finally printed. But the button you're going to be wanting to click is this Download All Files button. So clicking on that will then bring up a page, and as you can see along the bottom bar right here, it's saying, do you want to open or save? You're going to say you want to press open. So pressing open will... This is my personal computer, so that brings up something else. But you will be presented with this right here. This is what you will see. So when you open it up, you're going to be presented with all the files that are in that zip folder. So how will you unzip these? So the way that you do this, you're going to be using your mouse right here, and you're going to be clicking only on the files folder right here. And depending on your 3D print file that you download, there may not be a files folder. But you're going to want to click on anything that looks like the 3D file. You're going to left click it and drag over to your documents. Dragging that over to your documents right here. And then since I've already done this before, I'm just going to say yes to replace these files. So let's bring this back up. And so we're done with this right now, and we're also done with this. So back into the program, how are we going to get these files in? So the way that you do that is you just go up into the corner here and press File, and from here you want to File, Insert File. Again, that was, let me just exit out of this. It's File and Insert File. So from here, we're going to click on, from your documents, you're going to go to that Files folder that you just extracted to, and you're going to double click on any of the ones that you feel like should be the ones. So Gengar is the file. There's also a couple of others it looks like this person have made, but we're just going to use the first one for the example purposes. And here you go. You can see, as it's stated right here, it's too big. And this is why I use this file, because it is too big to be printed, and this lets us do some troubleshooting. So from here, I'm going to start talking about the print settings, and those can be found along the sidebar right here. They're all very nicely named, so you're able to tell what they are, but I'm just going to go over them right now. So the bottommost one is scale, and scale is probably what you're going to want to be looking at, right? So scale will obviously scale up and down in any of the axes. The way that your computers are set up in the libraries will mean that they're uniform scaling, so that means anything you type in these three right here will apply to the other two. So if this one's way too big, so let's scale it down to like 20%. So the way that you do that is you just click in the percentage box on any of the X, Y, or Z axis, and then type in the percentage. So we're doing 20%. That brings them down to a little bit more of a reasonable size. But as you can see, he's still out of the build plate area. So how do we move him back? So that way we do that, or the way that we do that rather, is we're going to left click and move. So left click and dragging moves the model. So that's what I was mentioning in the beginning. So we're going to want to zoom back in by scrolling up and down on the wheel, the mouse wheel. That's how I'm doing that. And he's still pretty big, right? So let's further move him down. Let's move him down to 10%. That seems like that looks like a reasonable size. So I'm going to put him in the corner over here. So that's the scale button. The orient button is right here. So as you can see, it's currently grayed out. And why is that? It's because I've not clicked on any model. So as you can see right now, when I hover over this model, it kind of highlights it. When you click on it and it gets highlighted in blue, that's when you can start changing the settings. So I've clicked on him. Now this is no longer gray. And you can now start orienting him. So the way that this works is it goes in increments and decrements of 90 degrees. So clicking any of these will flip him in that direction depending on which tab you're on. And the reason why you would need this is if you, say, imported the file and he looked like this, you probably don't want to print it upside down, so you just bring it back down like that. So that's that tab right here. The other tab is the Arrange button. This is a very interesting one, and it's actually very important. And I'm going to show you by just duplicating this model. I'm going to right-click and duplicate and create. So now we have two models here. And I'm going to put them on opposite ends. Say when you imported a bunch of files, they were, all around, strewn about. Many 3D files, or sorry, 3D projects off of Thingiverse do come in multiple parts because, say, maybe you need to glue them together or they need to be fit together. For that purpose, there's this Arrange button right here. Because the way that 3D printers work is if, say, you have two files that are on the opposite ends of the build plate, the arm of the 3D printer physically has to move to the spot to start printing. So if they're in opposite ends, it's probably not very efficient for it. So this button right here arranges the build plate to be in the most optimal position. So all you need to do is click Arrange, and then you're going to click Arrange Build Plate, and it groups them together. So that's a really good way of ensuring that your print will be as quick as possible. So on to the next setting. I'm just going to click on this guy right here and click Delete. The delete button on the keyboard, just so I can work with just one of these. Moving on, we're going to go into the print settings. And so this is going to be basic print settings. I'm going to have a section after this if you want to stick around for the advanced print settings, but for now, we're just going to stick to basic in this part of the video. So the ones that you want to care about is really just this support button. Support is, the way that you can think of it is a scaffold in your house. So it's temporary structures for a more permanent sort of fixture. So anything that has an overhang of more than 45 degrees, you're probably going to want structures on. You got this tail right here, which probably will need structures, as well as this chin right here. So anything that sort of overhangs, you're gonna want to checkbox this. It's probably good practice to keep it checked all the time. It doesn't add that much weight to the overall print, and really ensures that you get the best print anyway. So I'm just gonna check that right there. And another good example for this is a model that I use a lot, another Pokemon actually, that it has wings, and wings of course do not need, or sorry, that they're out in the middle of the air, so you cannot print into thin air, so it builds these supports up to it and then actually starts printing. I'll show a screenshot right now of what the supports would look like on that. So from here, you're pretty much done and your print is ready to print. And you're going to click up here, this Estimates and Print Preview button, as you can see. That's where you're going to get your pricing for your customers. Your customers are going to be paying by the gram, and it's 15 cents a gram. And when you click it, it's going to estimate the whole process and then tell you how much it'll weigh, how long it'll take, and how much filament it will use. So I'm going to just let it wait here for a second. So it has now finished its preview, and it's just going to give it a moment for it to do the whole thing. So as you can see, it says it's going to take 2 hours, 13 minutes, and it's going to weigh 23.68 grams. You're going to round that up to 24, and then multiply that by 15 cents, and whatever that is how much you're going to charge your customers. So this is a very interesting view because you can see where the computer has deemed it needed to put some supports. So as you can see, these orange bits right here are actually the supports. It looks like it didn't actually need it on the tail. So it thinks, the computer believes that if it doesn't put these here, then the whole model will start drooping. So from here, you're going to want to go into the bottom right hand corner over here, and then there'll be a big red print button. Currently mine says export because I do not actually have a printer connected to this computer, but for you guys it will say print. So from there, once you press print, you're good to go. Please stick around to the next section if you want to see any more advanced print features. So for this section, we're going to be going over some more of the advanced print settings that you can enable on your program. So this is going to be for more fine-tuning things, stuff like that. For the most part, your printer default settings will work for everything. But this is if you want to get a little bit more in depth, or if you're finding you're having a little issues. So the way that you're going to enable these print settings is in the print settings tab right here. You're going to go into custom settings. So from here, there's a bunch of settings you can enable, and I'm really going to go over just a couple of them that we use on our day-to-day basis in IT, and some that we found that our customers probably would like as well. So from here, you can enable all of these settings. We're going to go over to the raft setting right here. We're going to click show. We're going to do the same with layer height. Click show. I'm going to scroll down a little bit to infill density. We're also going to click show there, and that's going to be it for here. Everything else we're going to ignore until we get to the base layer. So from base layer, we're going to scroll all the way down, till we get to raft to model vertical offset, and we're going to click show as well. So let's go through these one by one. So we got rafts right here, which is always on by default if you hadn't had it checked off already. Rafts are the bottom layer, the first layer of a print. It is very good for adhering to the build plate, so that's why it's on by default. So it basically builds just a foundational base layer. For the most part, if you didn't do it, this print would only looks like the feet are the only thing touching the ground. So the feet would be the only thing adhering this whole print to the ground. So by putting a raft onto it, it would be able to adhere more to it, and it would be a bigger foundation for it to work off of. So in that case, when you're done with your prints, you would just snap that raft off. It is printed to be broken off very easily. So that's what that is. So underneath that, which is also something that we enabled, is raft to model vertical offset. So just like I mentioned, where it does snap off the raft, sometimes it doesn't, depending on the file, or depending on if the setting has been changed previously. So that's why I enabled this. It is set to normally be 0.33 millimeters, but you can increase that or decreasing that depending on if your raft is not actually coming off of the model easily. If you're finding that it's breaking off instead, like only partially breaking off instead of fully breaking off, you probably want to mess with the setting. It basically just sets a distance between the raft itself and the actual 3D model. So moving on, we have the infill density right here. So infill density is something that you probably want to use if your customer is building something that is weight bearing. So any sort of like a hanger for backpacks, or I don't know why anybody would build a tool, but a hammer or something like that, that you would use infill density. So that all that does is just mean that how dense is the model, so how filled in is it. So 100% means that the model is 100% filled in, it is 100% plastic, and 10%, which is the default, is only 10% filled in. 10% being the default is actually a good one, I'd say. It gives you a good rigidity versus cost. So, because if you increase the density, it increases the whole overall weight, which increases the cost for the customer. So you can play with that if you find that maybe it comes out a little bit too flimsy feeling, or if you're building it for like a kid who's probably going to toss it around. Infill density is a good thing to mess with. And moving on, we have under the shells section, layer height. So layer height is very interesting. It's basically what you would call resolution in any other sort of program, but it is how high each individual layer is. So 3D printing works by building layer by layer of plastic, and each layer is by default 0.2 millimeters thin, or thick rather. And this increases or decreases the height right here. That's what the setting does. So it can go on your printers up to 0.1 millimeters is how small it can get, and that would double basically the resolution of the whole thing. But the trade-off is, and why we normally don't recommend you print all your prints like this, is because it actually does double the amount of time it takes, because it has to do double the amount of layers. So 0.1, if you really want a nice looking print, go ahead and use that. 0.2 is our default though, so I'm going to put it back onto that. And yeah, so I'm just going to show you what that all looks like with everything enabled. So it looks about the same as how we had it before. So this right here, I just want to point out, this is what I actually wanted to do, is this is what the raft would look like. So right here we have this orange bit right here. So that's what the raft actually is. So it's the base layer of the whole model. So from here on out, those are basically the settings that you want to have enabled if you want to really delve deeper into the 3D printing program. Any of the other settings we normally wouldn't recommend because they get a little too nitty-gritty and can actually mess up some of your prints if you set them to the wrong settings. So please just keep to the ones that we have on screen right here. And if you need any assistance at all with setting them up and a little more clarification, please feel free to email the IT distribution group and we would be happy to help. Thank you so much.